Are you confused about how many carbs versus fats that you should be eating in order to reach your fat loss goals? In today's episode, we're diving into part 6 of my 7-part series on shedding belly fat, where we'll break down the ideal balance of carbs and fats based on your body type, goals, and metabolism. You'll learn the pros and cons of low-carb and high-carb diets, and I'll share my specific recommendations to help you make the most out of both. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a clear plan to manage your carbs and fats for optimal results. Before we dive in, if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, make sure you hit the follow button, and if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit like and subscribe down below. Today, I am really excited to dive into part 6 of my 7-part series on the Fat Loss Forever Pyramid. Happy December. I hope you guys are really ready to finish off 2024 strong. I know I've been talking over and over with the people in the 10-week transformation. If you're in the 10WT right now, I think you're in week 9, and really important to finish strong, to really hammer home the habits that you've been forming over the last 8.5 weeks. Let's really finish week 9 strong, go into performance test strong in week 10, and finish off the calendar year strong and go into 2025 looking and feeling the best we've ever felt. And with that said, if you want to join the 10-week transformation starting January of 2025, we're going to be going from January 20th to March 28th is going to be the first session of the 10-week transformation of 2025. You guys can join the waitlist today by going to nickcarrier.com/10WT waitlist. By joining the waitlist, you get 2 benefits. Number 1, you're going to get first access to register for the 10-week transformation, and spots here in Nashville are limited, and so spots are going to fly off the shelves, and you're going to want to reserve your spot before it's gone. The second benefit that's even huger to the 10-week transformation being on the wait list is that you'll get the option to get a personalized meal plan for 50% off. You guys, a personalized meal plan, I mean, you're going to get your breakfast, lunch, and dinner recipe and a grocery list every single day for 10 weeks in a row for 50% off. Instead of $1,200, it's going to be $600 for you to get all of that stuff done for you. And those are going to be based off of what foods you prefer, what your goals are, your macronutrient needs, what you like to cook, what you know how to cook, and what you've got going on in any particular week. So go to nickcarrier.com/10WT waitlist. This is whether or not you're brand new to the 10WT or an alumni of the 10WT. Join the waitlist today to get those perks. Now, let's dive into part 6 of 7 of this Fat Loss Forever Pyramid. Remember, this is not something that I came up with myself. This is something that Dr. Eric Helms came up with, his 7-step Fat Loss Forever Pyramid, and I learned about it in a course that I took from Dr. Lane Norton. So I wanted to give my credit where credit is due, but I wanted to expand on these ideas myself and show you how to implement these in your life. If your goal is fat loss, or even if your goal isn't fat loss and your goal is just optimal health, these things are going to very much come in handy. And remember, how this pyramid works is the things at the bottom of the pyramid are required first. And then everything on top of it is the next step. So you don't want to only focus on steps 4 and 5 without 1 through 3, because 1 through 3 need to be true before 4 and 5 are true. And so in each of these episodes, I've been running through all 7 steps and then diving deep into one of the steps in particular. So let's run through the 7. Step 1, or the base of this Fat Loss Forever Pyramid, is sustainability and adherence. Because I don't care how good your fat loss plan is, your fitness plan, your nutrition plan, it is only going to be good if you stick to it consistently. Step 2 is a caloric deficit. It doesn't matter what you do. If you don't create a calorie deficit, if you don't burn more than you're taking in, you're not going to be losing weight. Then number 3 is exercise. How to leverage the appropriate ratio of strength training and cardio in order to maximize fat loss while retaining muscle. Part 4 was self-monitoring, about how to actually track your behaviors to maximize your results. Part 5 that we talked about last week was protein and fiber, why those are the 2 most important macronutrients to leverage in order to healthily lose body fat. Today, we're going to be talking about carbs and fats, the appropriate amount of each of them that you should be having based off of your food preferences, based off of your metabolism, and based off your body type. And then next week, the 7th and final step of the pyramid, we're going to be talking about supplements. What supplements will help accelerate your fat loss goals, which ones are worth it, which ones are not, and which ones I specifically use myself. Now, again, in previous weeks, I've dove deeper into the first 5 Today we're diving into carbs and fats, part number 6. So carbs and fats, these are your two primary energy sources. I'm going to keep things relatively simple on some aspects of carbs and fats today. Carbs are going to be your fast energy sources. This is going to be the type of energy source that you can recruit when you need ATP quickly, when you need energy quickly. Your fats are going to be your slower energy source. You can get a lot of ATP from fats, but it takes a little bit longer for your body to create that ATP, to create that energy from fats. Now, when it comes to a fat loss goal, like I said, creating a calorie deficit is priority number 1, ensuring that the total number of calories that you consume is less than the total number of calories that you burn. Otherwise said, your expenditure is greater than your intake. That's priority number 1. The second thing that we said was priority from a macronutrient standpoint is protein, is getting an adequate amount of protein. And we dove deeper into the specific amounts, but I'll say it again, 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight per day. 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight per day. Then you fill in the rest of your nutrition or the rest of your diet plan with carbs and fats. So how do we do that? When it comes to achieving a fat loss goal, there have been study after study after study after study that's done. And basically all of them say the same thing. When calories and protein are equated, it doesn't matter what you do for carbs and fats. It will yield the same amount of fat loss. Let me say that again. If somebody is having 2,000 calories, or let's say, let me restart that. If there's 10 people eating 2,000 calories, and that's the amount that they need to be eating to lose weight, and all 10 of those people should be eating 150 grams of protein, and they're all eating 150 grams of protein, then some people are going to go high carb, medium carb, low carb. Some people are going to go high fat, medium fat, low fat. But as long as their calories add up to the same thing, they're going to experience the same amount of fat loss. So how do you determine whether or not carbs or fats, you should have more carbs, more fats, less carbs, less fats? Really, it's going to be what works best for you. Now, what does what works best for you actually mean? It's going to be about, number 1, like foods that you prefer. Because let's go back to the base, the foundation of this pyramid. It's sustainability and adherence. Being in a calorie deficit isn't that fun. Being in a diet isn't really that fun. So you're going to want to have foods that you actually enjoy and that you'll actually eat and that you'll eat consistently. So you want to make sure that the bulk of those foods, most of those foods, if not all of those foods, are foods that you prefer and that you actually enjoy eating. Then also, some people just feel better from eating more carbs. Some people feel better eating higher fat. So which one makes you feel better you can lean on that particular macronutrient when it comes to which one you give more calories to. You can also do something that, like, what is your family going to eat? Like if you're a parent and you have to cook meals that work for your entire family, what is your significant other going to eat? What are your kids going to eat? What can you batch cook for the entire family that is going to be easy to adhere to? And then lastly, is you can think about cost. You can get foods that are going to be lower in cost. You know, for example, if you're buying a lot of avocados versus buying a big bag of rice, you know, a big bag of rice is probably going to be cheaper than a whole bunch of avocados. And so you can think about cost when it comes to how many calories you give to carbs and how many calories you give to fats. Now, I'm going to actually be going a lot more specific into calories and how to figure out specific numbers here in a second. But I really want to give you guys one thing to keep in mind. The must-know fact when it comes to carbs, and then the must-know fact when it comes to fats. When it comes to carbs, high-intensity resistance training or high-intensity cardio, your glucose and your carbs are going to be your preferred fuel source because you're going to want the energy. You're going to need the energy quickly. And I started off the episode by saying fats can produce a lot of ATP, but it takes a little bit of time. And so when you need a lot of energy quickly, you need to recruit that ATP or get that ATP, not recruit, but get that ATP from your glucose and your carbs. Now, some people might say, I can do high intensity training even if I don't eat very many carbs. And that's true to a certain extent because, look, your body does make glucose on its own, but it makes about 5 grams per hour and about 120 grams per day. And so you can do high intensity training without eating carbs, but you might be tapping out of that 120 gram daily supply relatively quickly if you are not eating any carbs. So for example, let's just say 120 grams. Let's say you have 120 grams of glucose in your system. 120 grams of glucose times 4 calories per gram is going to be 480 calories that you have of glucose. And that's basically not eating any glucose or not eating any carbs. And so if you burn through 480 calories in your high intensity interval training session, then you don't have any glucose left over. That's when you're going to bunk out. That's when you're going to hit a wall in your high intensity training because your body is not going to be able to create enough ATP fast enough simply from fats. So one thing to keep in mind from carbs is don't go zero carbs if you do a lot of high intensity resistance training or high intensity cardio. And then one thing to keep in mind when it comes to fats is fats are essential for hormonal regulation and for brain health. So you don't want to have zero fat. I'd recommend basically for everyone, regardless of your size, to have a bare minimum of 40 grams of fat per day for those reasons. So again, know that carbs, if you're going zero carbs, then it's going to be really hard to do any kind of high intensity work and you might have a lot of low energy times throughout the day. So I wouldn't recommend zero carbs because of that reason. And then I wouldn't recommend zero fats, definitely not zero fats, because that would disrupt your hormonal regulation and it wouldn't be good for brain health. And so you want to make sure that you have a bare minimum of 40 grams of fat per day, regardless of body size. And obviously the bigger you are, the more you would ideally want to have. Now let's go back to figure out exactly how much carbs we should be eating or how much fats we should be eating. So I'm going to go dive into some numbers here. So if you want to take notes, take notes. If not, try to follow along as best you can. So we're trying to figure out how we can be in a calorie deficit, we can have enough protein, and then we figure out how carbs and fats fit into that. So let's say that our current total daily energy expenditure, the total number of calories that we burn on a daily basis is 2,500 calories. And we want to create a deficit in order to lose weight of somewhere around 200 to 500 calories. But for ease of numbers, let's say that you want to eat 2,000 calories. So that's a 500 calorie deficit and you want to eat 2,000 calories. Let's also say that you weigh 150 pounds. So I'm going to say that we're going to eat 150 grams of protein on your diet. 150 grams of protein times 4 is 600 calories. Because remember in previous episodes, 1 gram of protein equals 4 calories. So 150 grams times 4 is 600 calories. So of the 2,000 calories that you're consuming, 600 are going to be dedicated to protein. So for those of you guys who can do a little math in your head, that means there's 1,400 calories left over. Those 1,400 calories can be distributed to carbs and fats in a way that makes most sense for you. Now, if we did something like a traditional approach, which might be 60% of those calories go to carbs and 40% of those goes to fat, here's how that would look like. 1,400 calories that we have remaining, 60% of that, if we give that to carbs, is going to be 840 calories. 840 calories divided by 4 calories per gram is going to be 210 grams of carbs that you should eat per day. Okay, that's carbs. But then there's 1,400 calories, 40% of it going to fat. That's 560 calories. Then we do the 560 divided by 9 calories per gram, and that's going to be 62 grams of fat. And so that would give us the macronutrient breakdown. If we were eating 2,000 calories, we're in a 500 calorie deficit, then we want to have 150 grams of protein, 210 grams of carbs, and 62 grams of fat. Now, again, technically, you can move your carbs and fats up and down a little bit from day to day. Just know that if you decrease your carbs, know that you're decreasing, like let's say you decrease your carbs by 20 grams. 1 gram of carb is 4 calories. So if you decrease by 20 grams, that's 80 calories. And then when it comes to fat, if we want to increase our fat by the same amount of calories, we would take 80 calories divided by 9. 80 calories divided by 9 is going to be about 9 more grams of fat that you can add in. So you can manipulate those variables a little bit up and down depending on the day and everything like that. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a breakdown. I know that was a lot of numbers, but hopefully some of you guys were able to track throughout that. But if I'm talking to most people straight up about how I'm going to go about allocating carbs and fats to your particular diet, here's what I want to stress. Carbs are not the root of all evil. There's so many people right now who are talking about low carb recipes and low carb this and low carb that. Now, the truth of it is that processed carbs are the worst thing that you can eat. Processed sugars, processed carbs, ones that are high in calories and are highly processed, are things that are very nutrient poor. They cause inflammation and they don't cue your satiety signals. They do not keep you full. But high quality carbs, things like maybe rice, potatoes, quinoa, lentils, your vegetables, your fruits, those are what should be consumed and really what most people should not worry about. Now, if you have metabolic syndrome and you are maybe insulin resistant, that might be a little bit of a different story, but that's going to be a conversation for another day. But you want to be looking at some of your blood work numbers that will help guide you as to informing you whether or not you have metabolic syndrome. The other thing I want to say is fats are not bad because they're just high in calories. They just need to be closely looked at when you're looking to be in a calorie deficit, especially things like your butters, your nut butters, your oils, your sauces, and your cheeses. Those are things that can be very easily overconsumed and take you out of a calorie deficit if you're not careful. So carbs are not the root of all evil. High quality carbs are great. Highly processed carbs are not. Fats are not bad because they're high in calories. They just need to be tracked maybe a little bit more closely because they can be things that can be easily get you out of a calorie deficit. At the end of the day, it comes down to the total calorie intake and making sure that you're in a calorie deficit, then hitting your protein numbers, and then manipulating your carbs and fats based off of your preferences, based off of your food preferences, based off of what you like to eat, based off of what your family eats, based off of cost, based off of what you know how to cook and what you like to cook. The last thing that I'll kind of talk about is the timing of these macronutrients. For my education, it doesn't seem to be all that important as to when you consume carbs and when you consume fats. The one thing I will say is that if anything, when it comes to carbohydrates, having them around your training sessions can potentially help improve your energy during the training session and can potentially help improve your recovery post-training session. When it comes to fats, definitely maybe the least important of timing when it comes to macros, but one of the things that I have heard from some people is that if you have fats around or too many fats around your workout, then it can slow your digestion down. And if you have high amounts of fat before your workout and things are digesting slowly, then you might feel a little bit more full than you want to. And if you have a high amount of fats post-workout and it slows down your digestion, it might stunt the process of muscle protein synthesis. Again, I don't think it's necessarily something to get all that worked up about. I wanted to at least mention some of the things that I've heard from people that I respect. I'm not making it up, from something that I've heard from people that I respect. So if you don't take anything away from today, I want you to, couple things. One, not demonize carbohydrates, demonize the highly processed carbs and the highly processed sugars, but know that carbs should be your friend when eating the right ones. When it comes to fats, more than anything, just know that if you are actually trying to track these things closely, that it can be easy to overconsume certain fats. And when I say overconsume, I just mean that it will throw you out of calorie deficit. You can sometimes drain a lot of oil on things, a lot of sauces on things, a lot of cheeses on things. Sometimes you don't really realize how much fat can be in a tablespoon of almond butter or nut butter. And so just being careful about those things as well. But generally speaking, for my education, if you equate calories and protein, what you do with carbs and fat does not matter when it comes to just purely fat loss, as long as you maintain that calorie deficit. I hope you guys learned something today. Now remember, in the 10-week transformation starting January 20th to March 28th, you guys will have the ability to apply this stuff if you opt in for the meal plan option. And look, the meal plan option, if you're on the 10WT waitlist, will be 50% off. You guys, I don't know why I'm giving this great of an offer. It's just because I want to help so many people at the beginning of January 2025 to start off the year the way that they want to start off to get the results that they want to get. And so join the 10WT waitlist today to take advantage of that offer. nickcarrier.com/10WT waitlist. We're getting ready to open up registration just for the people on the waitlist. And if you're not on the waitlist prior to opening up of registration, you won't get 50% off. And you'll still be able to get the meal plan, but you won't get 50% off. And again, the meal plan, I'll give you a breakfast, lunch, and dinner recipe for all 7 days of the week for 10 weeks in a row. And that's going to fit your macronutrient needs. Like all the numbers that I gave you, you don't have to do any of that stuff. Leave that to me. So join the waitlist today by going to nickcarrier.com/10WT waitlist. Also, I hope you share this episode with a friend or a family member. If you're not following the podcast yet or subscribing yet, hit follow. If you're watching on YouTube, hit like and subscribe down below. It really helps to help grow the show and spread the word further, because more than anything, I want you guys to take this information, to let it educate you, to let it motivate you, to let it empower you to get closer to the healthiest version of yourself and ultimately closer and closer to your best you.